Leading a startup team, whether you're delivering a sugar rush, stocking coffee, or getting a regular delivery of snacks, Office Depot has solutions that fit every startup culture, from getting those first business cards and stationery to ordering fleece pullovers with your new logo. To learn how Office Depot and the California Technology Council have partnered to bring you savings on all of these startup essentials and more, go to californiatechnology.org/member benefits. I'm Daniel Levine, and this is the Bio Report.
CytoDyn's lead candidate for HIV is part of a new class of therapies that work by protecting healthy cells by blocking viral infection. But the receptor that the drug targets also plays a role in cancer metastases and may provide a new approach to treating a wide range of cancers. We spoke to Richard Pestell, Chief Medical Officer of CytoDyn, about the drug, how it works, and why it may have value in a range of serious medical conditions. Richard, thanks for joining us.
Danny, it's a pleasure.
We're going to talk about CytoDyn, HIV, and cancer. CytoDyn is developing a monoclonal antibody for the treatment of HIV. Let's start with the treatment of HIV today. The development of new therapies for HIV don't generate as much attention as they once did. How good an arsenal do we have in place to treat the disease?
Well, Danny, look, I think that the medications that are in place at the moment are very effective. People don't feel very well while they're taking them. They don't feel their full strength. They don't feel their real sense of well-being. And the other problem is that there's a lot of tablets to take, and you've got to remember to take them every day. And if the medications aren't taken every day, resistance to the virus can grow up. The other issue is that even when people do keep to their medications, take them every day as they should, resistance to the virus does turn up. And it's really this marketplace with patients who've been resistant to the current therapies that Pro-140 or leronlimab has its main purpose. And it seems that from what's taken place to date, people who take leronlimab, which is a once-weekly injection, subcutaneous injection, much like people taking insulin for diabetes, they feel good. People who stop taking their previous medications realize that, in fact, the medications were reducing the quality of life that they were experiencing. And so a lot of patients who've tried the monotherapy or have used leronlimab want to continue taking that medication once they've experienced it. So in summary, yes, many of the patients are well managed now with current tablets, but there's resistance that can appear, and there is an improved quality of life in people who switch to leronlimab. And that's really the opportunity that I believe CytoDyn has been pursuing. I would emphasize there's two unique features that I was drawn to. One is the lack of serious adverse events. This is an antibody where there have been no serious adverse events reported to date, and that's pretty unusual in my experience. The second is it's highly effective at the higher dose of 700 milligrams of restraining the viral load, highly effective at restraining the viral load. So those are the two outstanding and unique features of this leronlimab or Pro-140.
And is the expectation that it would be used as a monotherapy?
Yes, I think that's certainly the way it's looking now, a very likely outcome. And it may well be a preference that patients they'll vote with their feet, I'm guessing, based on what we've seen to date.
CytoDyn is in advanced development of the drug today. It's an anti-CCR5 monoclonal antibody for the treatment of HIV. What exactly is Pro-140 and how does it work?
Danny, there's a receptor on the surface of immune cells, a subset of what we call T cells, and the HIV virus uses this receptor to enter into the cell. And once it's inside this particular immune cell, it can proliferate undetected. And as the virus grows up, it's able to multiply and make the patient subsequently quite sick. There are a family of receptors, but why CCR5 of all the different CCRs is chosen it's not known, but it's certainly an important co-receptor for the entry of the HIV virus into these immune cells. The curious thing that we found, less than 10 years ago now, is that unlike what we were taught in medical school, that CCR5 is just expressed on the immune cells, it turns out that when a cell becomes cancerous, it turns on CCR5 also. So a normal breast cell, a normal prostate cell, a normal colon cell doesn't express CCR5. But what we found is as the cell becomes cancerous, it turns on that same receptor. And when it turns on that receptor, the cell can metastasize and spread throughout the body. So a very, very surprising finding, but certainly patented and a tremendous opportunity for patients with cancer, because it is the spread of cancer that kills patients.
I want to return to that thought, but before we speak about cancer, is this a mechanism that's applicable to all HIV patients or just a subset?
Well, I'm certainly not an HIV expert. My training has been in oncology and cancer and endocrinology, but it's my understanding that HIV uses CCR5 as an essential co-receptor for entry. I'm familiar with a particular, there is a genetic abnormality, Danny, in which patients can have a defective CCR5. So they're genetically defective CCR5. And those patients are resistant to HIV infection, and so-called Delta 32 mutation, or it's an alternate form of the receptor. So yes, it's my understanding that this receptor is an essential co-receptor for HIV virus entry. Patients who don't have the receptor are resistant.
Is this a unique mechanism of action within the arsenal of drugs available today to treat HIV?
So the two types of assets typically are small molecule inhibitors to block receptors and antibody-based therapy approaches. And, small molecule inhibitors have advanced tremendously in targeting the receptor on the surface of the cell. There are other ways of targeting the HIV infection, including mechanisms involved in replication of the virus and essential enzymes the virus use, integrase inhibitors and so forth. But in terms of targeting the receptor on the surface of the cell, the two approaches that have shown to be effective are antibodies which target the receptor and small molecule inhibitors that block the receptor activity. Unfortunately, we're not perfect at designing small molecule inhibitors, and so there sometimes are these off-target effects of some of these other types of molecules that are used to block CCR5. So some of these other drugs that are targeting the receptor, Maraviroc, Vicriviroc, that were initially used in the marketplace. The Maraviroc, for example, does have a black label warning because of the serious adverse events associated with the compound, in part because it's not as selective as it could be. And we believe that the reason why the leronlimab has such a great safety profile is because it's very, very specific in its targeting.
You're hoping to begin a rolling application for approval of the drug in the first quarter of 2019. What do we know about it from studies to date?
Danny, the combination phase 3 pivotal study has been completed. The study met its primary endpoints and appears to have met its safety endpoints. So as a function of that, the company has been substantially de-risked, and the company is moving forward with generating sufficient antibody for further use.
Is there any indication that the drug interferes with the normal functioning of the immune system?
Well, the good news is you can live without CCR5. So the blocking of the CCR5, as far as we know, using this antibody, does not compromise the immune system. Historically, people who have defective or no functional CCR5 actually grew up in the area where the Vikings lived, and in parts of Eastern Europe because they were resistant to plague. So that's bubonic plague. So people without the receptor have to the best of our determination, have a normal immune function.
Because the drug acts on this receptor, it has the potential to be useful in a number of indications. You mentioned cancer earlier. Let's start there. What's its potential as a cancer therapy?
Well, I think, Danny, if I can just share with you the idea here that the idea with cancer and how cancer works has changed quite a lot in the last few years. So in the past, we used to think about the solid tumor, the breast cancer, the prostate cancer, the primary tumor. But now we understand that whether it's breast cancer, prostate cancer, colon cancer, pancreatic cancer, there's a solid primary tumor, but at the same time there are what we call circulating tumor cells. So the tumor itself is shedding into the bloodstream, and these tumor cells then spread to different parts of the body, and it's those metastases that ultimately kill patients. Now, if you do this thought experiment, there was a time where we knew that diabetes, for example, is the primary problem with diabetes. The pancreas is not making enough insulin, but it's the blood levels of glucose that kill the patients with diabetes. And so now we naturally accept that the way we manage diabetes is to manage the blood levels of glucose so that a patient's eyes are preserved and kidney function are preserved. We don't think about fixing the pancreas so much, and for most patients. Similarly, the thinking around cancer has started to evolve, where we're focusing now more on what kills the patient, the circulating tumor cells in the bloodstream. And so we've been developing technologies. We and many other laboratories have developed technologies to measure very accurately these circulating tumor cells, and in fact to monitor those circulating tumor cells as part of the therapy. So in fact, the clinical trial that we're currently developing will be monitoring the circulating tumor cells in patients with breast cancer who are being treated with leronlimab. So the thinking has changed from blasting the primary tumor with chemotherapy, radiation, and other types of drugs to a new approach, which is focusing on reducing the circulating tumor cells. In addition, we're looking at augmenting the body's normal anti-tumor immune response. So there's evidence that CCR5 inhibitors have two effects. One is to block the homing, the metastases, and the second is to augment the body's anti-tumor immune response.
How does that augment the body's anti-tumor response if, in essence, you're inhibiting part of the immune system?
Yes, so the immune system has different components, and some of those immune cells are suppressing the tumor and some are promoting the tumor's activity. And it's the balance of these different components of the immune system that are very important in the body's fight against the tumor. And so drugs have been developed, which are currently being tested in a variety of cancers, to augment the body's anti-tumor immune response. And these so-called immune checkpoint inhibitors are now a particularly good opportunity to eradicate a patient's cancer. But Danny, your question was how could leronlimab change the management of cancer as a disease? And the way it could potentially change the management of cancer as a disease would be in the same way that insulin has changed the management of patients with diabetes. So rather than treating the primary source of the problem, the pancreas, patients take insulin shots to manage the abnormal blood glucose. We're perceiving a change in management of the disease where a patient may be managed for their metastases using weekly injections of leronlimab to restrain the metastases in the bloodstream. So this is a conceptual change which we hope will be effective in managing cancer moving forward. This will be wonderful for patients because leronlimab does not have serious adverse events associated with it. In contrast to the conventional therapies we use, chemotherapy and radiation, which are associated with substantial systemic side effects.
Is the expectation that the drug would be used in combination with immunotherapies?
Yes, absolutely, Danny. And in fact, just to give you a sense of what a revolution is taking place right now, if you look back 10 years ago, there was no consideration in the cancer marketplace for using CCR5 inhibitors. Just within the last 3 months, Merck and Pfizer have both opened clinical trials targeting CCR5 with a combination of CCR5 inhibitors and checkpoint inhibitors in colon cancer. So absolutely, we believe that the combination of leronlimab and a checkpoint inhibitor would be a valuable new approach to the management of cancer.
And why are you initially exploring triple-negative breast cancer?
Danny, the reason we're focusing initially on triple-negative breast cancer is that we conducted an analysis of 2,200 patients with breast cancer, and we classified those patients based on the genes in their cancer into the different types of breast cancer. And we found that the patients who were so-called triple-negative breast cancer were nearly all positive for CCR5. So although they were negative for HER2, negative for the estrogen receptor, negative for the progesterone receptor, they were strongly positive for CCR5. Many of these women are African American or Ashkenazi Jewish in background, and these particular tumours have a very poor prognosis. So we've focused in our first study on the triple-negative breast cancer patients. We have almost completed the protocol with the intent of moving expeditiously with this clinical trial. And it's particularly important because the prognosis for these women is so poor, and there are currently no targeted therapies attacking a specific molecular target driving this particular cancer.
What other indications might you pursue with this?
Danny, it's exciting because many different types of cancers express CCR5. We have found that CCR5 is expressed on prostate cancer, colon cancer, pancreatic cancer, melanoma, a variety of other types of cancers. And furthermore, it's turned on in expression by some of the current chemotherapies that are in use. So the number of different types of cancers are substantial, and furthermore, the proportion of patients who overexpress CCR5 in their tumours is substantial. We found almost 50% of women overexpress CCR5 in their cancer.
How about beyond cancer? Does this have implications in autoimmune or other diseases?
Danny, this is one of the wonderful challenges for CytoDyn to have is that there is good evidence that CCR5 may play a role in several other diseases. The one particular disease is called graft versus host disease. This is a disease which is affecting a subset of patients who undergo bone marrow transplantation. It can be a deadly disease. It typically starts off by targeting the gastrointestinal tract, but It looks like, from what we know so far, and certainly the preclinical studies in a mouse model of graft versus host disease, that Pro-140 leronlimab dramatically improved the outcome of the animals that had graft versus host disease. And that's the basis of an expedited phase 2 study that's currently underway. There are other indications for leronlimab. One of these, I give lectures to medical students, and we talk about the epidemic of liver cancer that's occurring. And part of the cause of liver cancer in the US is a disease called NASH. And this is a type of fatty infiltration in the liver, which then causes destruction of the liver. It's partly related to diet and the type of diet and the amount of calories and fat in the diet. Nonetheless, this disease, NASH, predisposes to cancer and is a deadly disease. There are now significant studies demonstrating the importance of CCR5, the target of leronlimab, in driving this disease, NASH. The last interesting finding is that the current long-term data looking at the effects of CCR5 inhibitors in patients with HIV suggests that patients who've been treated with CCR5 inhibitors have less osteoporosis. Furthermore, in a mouse model where the CCR5 was knocked out, there was evidence that CCR5 plays a role in the osteoclasts and their function, which is important in normal bone homeostasis. So Danny, to answer your question, yes, there are several other important diseases beyond cancer, and they include NASH and osteoporosis and graft versus host disease.
Those are some big and important markets. Given all the opportunities you have, how does a small company prioritize given its limited resources, and is there a plan to use partnerships to leverage the opportunities?
Danny, absolutely. A company must understand the size of the market and must understand how to form relationships in order to move the product to market most time efficiently, both for financial reasons but also because of the potential impact on the quality of life of people. There are a couple of types of strategies that are being pursued in the cancer area. In that regard, we've found that CCR5 inhibitors substantially enhance the efficacy of cell killing by a number of other targeted therapies that are currently in the marketplace. So one strategy in the cancer area is to form these collaborative relationships with companies that sell those particular drugs. In terms of financing for CytoDyn, non-dilutive financing, one of the areas that we have focused on in the immediate term are the commercialization of a prognostic test for prostate cancer. One of the assets acquired by CytoDyn from Prostagene is a prostate cancer prognostic test. It uses a new type of technology called nanostring. There have been 3 retrospective clinical studies, and if one looks at each of those 3 clinical studies, the prognostic test for prostate cancer is far superior to the incumbent tests in the marketplace. Now, there are about 250,000 men each year who are in need of such a test, and certainly the current data suggesting a substantially better predictive value, so-called hazards ratio, suggests that this test, once commercialized, may be implemented effectively by demand from clinicians and patients alike. And we would very much like to get this test into the marketplace to allow patients to make better decisions around their prostate cancer management. So yes, the prostate cancer test being developed by CytoDyn now is one example of non-dilutive funding that we're currently focused on in the near term. But the big picture, Danny, is, as you say, there are a number of different types of opportunities, and the strategic imperatives of CytoDyn have focused on a stepwise process, identifying new non-dilutive revenue streams from commercializing, both through licensing agreements and commercialization of this prognostic test, while we continue work in the clinical trials space, in particular the next being the rolling BLA for HIV.
Richard Pestell, Chief Medical Officer of CytoDyn. Richard, thanks so much for your time today.
Danny, thank you so much for your time. It was a real pleasure.
Thanks for listening. The Bio Report is a production of the Levine Media Group. To automatically download this podcast each week, subscribe to our RSS feed or through iTunes or other podcast manager. To join our mailing list, go to levinemediagroup.com. We'd love to hear from you. If you want to drop us a line or are interested in sponsoring this podcast, send an email to danny@levinemediagroup.com. Special thanks to Jonah Levine, who composed our theme music, and the Jonah Levine Collective, which performs it.